Warning: the following podcast is utter nonsense and may cause agoraphobia, kleptomania, insomnia, and oppositional defiance disorder. We are required by law to provide you with this disclaimer for hazardous materials.
Back to another quarantine edition of Hazardous Materials, last week's comics this week. We're thinking this is probably going to be the last time we're going to do this particular format. We're going to migrate to the studio next week as new comics are actually coming out. We're going to start doing the show we intended to do in the first place. So I've talked to Gideon and we hugged it out and we shared saliva. So, I mean, if we're going to go out together, I guess we're going to go out together, right, boy?
Sure, whatever you say. If that's the case, I'm going to stay here on the Lego Enterprise.
It is a fine enterprise.
Thank
Although
you.
I can't see Picard, and that's really hurting my feelings. There he is.
The torsos are by Minifig FX. If anyone wants to make their own bridge crew, the bridges of my own design, and that was one of my quarantine projects that I'm very happy to show off in my background.
I had no such quarantine projects. I really don't have much to show for my time indoors, except the fact that I have truly mastered Amazon. Even the slightest thing. I mean, I had some lights go out on me in my my bathroom. Instead of actually planning a sojourn out to Walmart, I'm like, I can get some LEDs off Amazon. Doink. And that happened.
Wow.
I got all kinds of crazy shit. I even got this cool little fan for my desk because it was too hot during the days. Nice. All right. So what we're here about, what we're going to talk about, is issues 18 to 25 of the original New Mutants run. This is the one that Chris Claremont did in the mid-'80s.
With Bill Sienkiewicz on art duties.
Going straight into the sloppy, crazy ink style that came from Moon Knight and is now in, I guess, an X-Men book for some reason. Bill Sienkiewicz. I've made no mystery that as a child, when I was reading this, I did not do well with the art shift. It went from this nice and clean Bob McLeod and then to Sal Buscema, and then boom, this crazy, moody, strangely angular and heavily inked version of Sienkiewicz.
Yeah, you look at this his first page with Danny Moonstar wrapped up into a blanket that morphs into the Demon Bear at the end. It's wild. It's something like you don't even see art like that in comics today. It's so wild and experimental, very strange to throw into the mix on what, but at this point was a very traditional looking comic style for the 80s. And you just have absolutely wild stuff in this book. I can't compliment the art enough.
Now, while as a kid I was kind of thrown off, I still continued to buy and collect New Mutants with the same fervor that I'd always done. So every issue was like super important. I would go to the newsstands, not newsstands, but the convenience stores back when they actually sold comic books with magazines, looking for the newest New Mutants. And it actually has that particular run as some of the best character development for what was at the time my favorite character, Wolfsbane.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of great Wolfsbane stuff in these issues.
There's a lot of great stuff in both her the beginning of the Cloak and Dagger saga, which was the fairy tale comic, and the Slumber Party comic, which deals with Warlock's arrival.
Yes. I really love the Epic Collection, which is for the Demon Bear saga, which includes all of Sienkiewicz's issues and should be able to find at your local comic book store or online. They include the house ad announcing this run with an awesome Bill Sienkiewicz sketch with "Don't call them ex-babies anymore" across the top, is kind of heralding the drastic shift in tone the book would have, because whoo boy, does it get real spooky real quick.
Yeah, it almost seems like the audience it was speaking to decidedly went from the early teens into the late teens real quick.
It's like, oh, you ain't 13 no more. It's time for some 15-year-old horror.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, this also continues the strange trend of sexualizing Danny at a turn of a coin.
Yeah,
Yeah.
couple of uncomfortable moments there. But that said, Demon Bear Saga is probably a top 10 X-Men story for me. If for nothing else, the visuals are so powerful and striking. It's tough to say because as much as I love Sienkiewicz's run in the book, it feels almost like it peaks a little early because Demon Bear Saga goes so hard. It goes so wild with the art and experimentation. I guess probably the Legion arc is comparable in terms of the visuals pulled off. But for the section that we read for today, the Cloak and Dagger story definitely doesn't compare the Demon Bear Saga, as particularly like in terms of character development as well. Because Demon Bear Saga, like it shouldn't be understated that while the artwork is absolutely steals the show, Claremont's still doing absolutely incredible character work in this book.
And I did some reading beyond the story arc the two story arcs that we're doing today. And I looked at the Legion books and, I didn't recognize a lot of stuff in there. And I had to go back to my childhood and wonder what was going on during that time. And for a while, I stopped reading New Mutants from Legion all the way to Brett Blevins.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't reading it.
Wow.
And then when I started reading is pretty much when Cypher was killed. And I'm like, what the hell?
I really wish they would collect those issues between here and Fall of the Mutants, because after this point, New Mutants is collected very sporadically, so it can be a little hard to track down in trade form. You can probably still find the singles without too much issue, but I mean, trades are so much more convenient, and I love the way they look on the shelf. Because my New Mutants run, it jumps from this to Fall of the Mutants to, I'd say Asgardian. Yeah, Asgardian War comes before Fall of the Mutants. So this to Asgardian War, Fall of the Mutants, Inferno. Man,
I'm with you. I do love me some hardback trades, and they do look good on the shelf. My collection of Blackest Night is like a shelf that's this wide.
All those tie-ins.
Yeah, and I did recently buy the Marvel Masterpiece hardbound edition of the collection for Spider-Woman comics from 1979 to now.
Nice.
So I'm waiting for the first one of that because they've only released one. The second one is like at the end of summer, and they're just this high end quality of cover, and I'm really looking forward to it. You know how much
I regret not getting the Dazzler one because instead of doing the normal kind of grayish like border around the cover they normally do, they did a glittery cover. It's amazing. It's so good.
If I'm not mistaken, wasn't Sienkiewicz involved in Dazzler as well?
Yes, heavily involved. He did quite a few covers for the book. He did a lot of character design work for it as well. And whenever we do our fourth and final part of this New Mutants coverage, Dazzler does show up in New Mutants. So nice amount of covers there.
We truly are the Punisher Volume 1 miniseries of this. But remember, I don't know if you're old enough to remember this, but Punisher didn't have his own book for a very long time. But then he came out with a miniseries. It was going to be 4 issues. 2 issues into this, the banner across the top said, hey, this is going to be a 3-issue miniseries. Then it got to 3 issues and got to 4. And then right at the 4th issue, no, it's a 5-issue miniseries.
Shockwave cover on number 5 that says number 5 in a 4-issue series. And then when the book ends at 80 or 81, it's number 81 in a 4-issue series.
If I'm not mistaken, wasn't Sienkiewicz in that issue?
Yes, Sienkiewicz did quite a few covers for the Transformers book.
I remember that cover, Shockwave.
Love Sienkiewicz, very strange choice for the Transformers, but it ultimately worked. Like his covers,
he got around a lot in the 80s.
Dude was an early cover superstar because nowadays it's very common to see artists that primarily have cover work versus interior work. But in the 80s, Sienkiewicz was a serious hot commodity with how heavily stylized and different his stuff was from the rest of the books on the rack. Like he did the cover to like a Wonder Man series. He was doing Dazzler, Transformers, doing interiors on New Mutants, doing a Daredevil original graphic novel, interiors on Elektra. Just one of my favorite artists of all time. And I'm really excited to talk about his work today.
Yeah, I think I remember seeing him do a Typhoid Mary at some point.
Yeah, dude.
Anyway, we're gonna dive right into issue 18, and I do have to say the cover for 18 is beautiful. It's truly eye catching, and it doesn't waste any time. The Demon Bear saga jumps right in with the Demon Bear materializing and taking Danny out pretty much the entire run of this. Even though this is obviously her story, this is her enemy, she's not in it for all intents and purposes.
Yeah, once again, the New Mutants find themselves kind of rudderless without their leader figure. And so, since before Danny kind of stepped up to fill the role that Karma was fulfilling, now we see Sam and Magic as kind of the go-to leaders of the book, with Magic being a bit more on top of things than Sam.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, a lot of things happened for Magic during this particular story arc that have carried through into the rest of her life. This is the first time you finally see her with her iconic long hair bangs hair that she still wears to this day. She even talks about the fact that her sword has changed. So we're now seeing the classic hilt on the sword. And this is also the first time we see her magic armor popping up as she takes hits.
Yes, which is a huge part of this run. Like that builds up throughout the series, which, and in true Chris Claremont fashion, they have to go into the full description of it every time it pops up because, I mean, every comic's someone's first comic, so you got to catch them up.
So a lot of frames are talking about, I was like, oh my God, I have armor where my flesh used to be. And she's all this whole internal monologue trying to figure out what's going on with her and why her powers are different or why her sorcery is different. And
I love the Claremontism of the totality of her soul, describing the soul blade. That's the totality of, say, Psylocke's psychic powers or Jean's psychic blast. It's a fun little phrase that he comes back to often, and it's nice seeing it. Like nigh invulnerable and blasting, which does show up multiple times in these issues. One time Professor X says it. So
now this is also the issues where we find out that when it comes to spirits, demons, all that crazy stuff, you need to put magic on the forefront. And that's actually what's going on here with this image I have in the background. This is actually from the New Mutants movie. In the foreground, you can see Magic in that little blue haze with the Demon Bear kind of squaring off with her. This is almost a complete recreation of the last issue of the Demon Bear saga.
Which has me even more, rereading this has me even more hyped for the movie.
Mm-hmm.
I do kind of revisiting a point that you mentioned in prior episodes of how deeply intertwined this book is with Claremont's work on X-Men. The opening of number 18 has very little bearing on the rest of the series because it's essentially an introduction for Rachel Gray, who was at that point a major fixture in the X books when I believe John Romita Jr. was on the title at that point. But
yeah,
we see the raid on the Xavier School, Charles getting blown away with one of my favorite 2-page spreads of this run, which we're gonna throw in right there. And then her going back in time and being like, things sure are different. And then assuming that you're already reading X-Men, because why the hell wouldn't you be?
I remember reading that when I was a kid and going, wow, that got serious. Because Xavier took it almost, you'd think it's a tank shell because all the tanks are there, but it's obviously a rifle.
Shockingly graphic.
But it is very graphic. And this is, the first time we ever see Rachel in the present trying to connect with the X-Men. And, and of course, in fashion of New Mutants, it's very personal and low key. I mean, you've got entire pages of her just standing outside trying to make a decision of whether to go in or not. And she encounters the cops and she's like, oh, the cops, they're not trying to kill me. He's just curious. And X-Men wouldn't waste pages on that stuff, but New Mutants will. For lack of a better term.
I think it's kind of funny that also later on we see Selene becoming the Black Queen, which I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess that's when that happened, because in X-Men she's just introduced as the Black Queen and is again Rachel's main antagonist in that X-Men arc. So it's just kind of interesting how deeply entwined these two books are at a time where I guess you were just kind of hit or miss on whether your readership was buying every single book you were putting out.
Yeah, I don't even remember Rachel being on any level involved with New Mutants. So to see these issues used as her entrance into the current timeline seemed like a weird choice to me.
Yeah, it's very surprising. But that said, I can't think of an artist to be better suited to drawing these sequences than Sienkiewicz. Like, no shade on John Romita Jr. Love his X-Men issues, but my God, that opening sequence is just gorgeous.
As a kid, I was a little confused by it.
Oh yeah,
of the red hair. I was like, is that Jean Grey?
No, as an adult rereading it, I was confused by it. So
because they don't introduce her. Yeah, yeah. It's like she's there. She's got long red hair. She's talking about her powers. No name. Okay, now she's got short hair. Wow, Rain got taller. What's she doing outside? So confusing.
But moving on, the kids are doing their standard little danger room bit. But meanwhile, in the reaches of space, a shape-shifting circuit board does battle with his dad and makes his way to Earth. So Warlock is such a Sienkiewicz creation right off the bat. He's in his first issue. Like, no one but Sienkiewicz has mastered his visuals. He always looks a little too real when anyone else draws him. I think the next best artist to tackle Warlock is probably Brett Blevins, because I think Brett Blevins understood the cartoony qualities of the character.
Yeah.
But I think too many artists tried to, I guess, overthink Warlock's design. Sienkiewicz just intends this character to essentially be a personified sketch who's constantly morphing, constantly just like looking like he's being edited and shifting around. And it's such a unique look for a character. And with having such a charming personality as Warlock as well, really just makes him a memorable addition to the cast.
Yeah, and of course, very early on, we find out where the bond between Doug and Warlock happened is because no one could understand Warlock. So they brought in Doug, and it's like, hey, by the way, Doug, we're the New Mutants. Can you talk to this guy?
Yeah, hilarious if that's the reveal that Doug's a mutant. They just go to his house in the middle of the night and be like, hey, Professor X told us you're a mutant. Come help us understand this alien language.
Such a weird, strange way to introduce this character and his abilities. There was no great reveal. It's just...
Yeah, I was very surprised by how nonchalant it was.
Yeah.
But the bigger story is, of course, Danny's pushing herself really hard in the danger room fighting bears before she gears up and goes out to the woods to tackle the demon bear,
which quickly guts her.
Yeah, it is. It's a great fight sequence, but she does not do too hot. And the kids, Rain, who's got that psychic connection with Danny, is like, oh, she's in trouble. And so they run out and they find her bleeding out in the woods. And like any responsible kids, take her to a hospital.
Which leads us into issue 19 and an introduction, strangely important introduction to a random cop and a random nurse.
Yeah. We'll get to that in a bit. It's not great. It is, I feel very safe in saying, the worst part of Demon Bear Saga.
Yeah, there's a level of cultural appropriation that, in the 80s, that it seemed rather harmless.
But it's it's pretty awful. There's no dancing around it. We'll get to it when we get to it, but buckle up, folks.
This reminds me of is the time when they in Thunderbolts where they made Beetle black.
Oh yeah, because he disguises himself, right?
Yeah, well, like permanently.
Yeah,
he becomes black, and he's black for a long time, and then suddenly it reverts back.
I think he still was by Superior Foes. So I guess he went back.
No, he reverted back sometime before then. I don't know why that occurred. It seemed like a strange, but anyway.
It's a weird choice either way, but
it was reflective of the times.
We get a fun haunted house little story in the hospital with the New Mutants running around trying to protect Danny while she is under the knife.
A lot of these scenes echo very, very closely to the trailer footage from New Mutants.
I especially want to highlight this great scene of the demon bear growling over a couple of targets that will become important later with just, Beautiful, beautiful stuff. I'm not going to shut up about how much I love Sienkiewicz's art throughout this review. So
Yeah, I mean, the
buckle up.
demon bear is a massive, nasty creature, and I gotta say, this demon bear looks really cool.
Yeah, like I can't say enough about the character design that went into it, because you can still tell it's a bear, but it's such a massive form.
It's like a tower with claws.
The eyes, yeah, like I'm at a loss for words for describing it. But back to the action, the kids start their throwdown with the bear, and he slashes Ileana on the back, which causes her to suddenly grow some armor there, with her responding with, "Did this stuff protect me? Is it some sort of armor? I guess I've got a whole lot more to learn about myself. This will become important later on."
Yeah. God, there's one point where like the whole armor just covers her from head to toe except for one of her legs.
Yeah. So the bear, seeing that he is fighting a losing battle, decides to warp the kids along with his hostage cop and nurse to his own realm. And we get a fun little kind of damage meter of the Shadowlands, with a nice little grid that shows how much of his influence is spread over it with some ink splotches. And throughout the battle, occasionally you get little updates of how it's going. And so you get more and more of it spreading. It's a great effect. Very, very cool. And meanwhile, the bear's also got a little bubble showing Danny's operating room, with the implication of, once I finish beating up these kids, I'm gonna go back there and Batista bomb all these doctors. Just gonna wreck shop. Do some claw action.
Yeah, of course, we got this scene I'm talking about right here. It's interrupted by my background, I guess.
Real big bear.
Yeah, well, the bear's all facing against magic again, but they're apparently in some kind of church.
We'll see what that's all about.
Look at that face.
But speaking of claw action, the problematic elements we were talking about with his captives is that he tears their souls out, and then they turn into Native Americans, complete with vaguely Native American outfits. It's really bad.
He basically turns them into Native American demons.
Yeah.
And from what I understand, even later on when they're cured of this, the charm is so potent that they're still innately Native Americans.
And they stick around like that through Muir Island with Moira McTaggart. But it's a really bizarre choice. I don't really get what they were going for with it. And
I'm not really sure what was going on there either. I don't know what the story hook was supposed to be.
Because the characters don't really go anywhere. They kind of just become background inhabitants of Muir Island after this. And they start wearing like headbands and buckskin boots. It's really bad. Like, I love this story, but this element is pretty inexcusable. Yeah. But that said, the fight with the New Mutants and the Demon Bear, again, rules. Sienkiewicz's art, top notch. I'm going to be saying that a lot this episode. You get Magic discovering the full extent of how her powers work. You get some of Magic's best moments are in this run.
Yeah, they get dragged into the spirit world, where at the very beginning of each of the comics, they get a little map that shows you where the shadow parts of the world are happening. And while they're continuing to fight this bear, the shadows are growing.
Yeah, we mentioned that earlier. The ink spots like growing across it,
and it's affecting people like Sunspot. So it's got the kids running to find sun-catched pots of this so that Roberto can recharge.
And ultimately, Ileana's soul sword just slices through the bear with the power of Cannonball behind her to give her enough oomph that she can just slice through this bastard. And it turns into Danny's parents.
Who are not dead.
Yeah. She has long thought that the demon bear killed her parents, but they just were absorbed by the spirit, essentially.
And because they were absorbed by it, they were the reason why the bear sought Danny out, because her parents were trying to find her.
So Danny gets her parents back, what the doctors couldn't fix, because at first they're like, well, we got her like back alive, but she's paralyzed now. The healer from the Morlocks is able to give her the use of her legs, but not immediately. It is a slow process. Danny has to relearn how to walk through the next few issues. And so that's a interesting challenge for her to go through. Like we see her in the next issue in a wheelchair, and then she moves on to a cane, and eventually she does have her full mobility back.
And in hindsight, they do mention that they're like, wow, okay, so this happened and Danny's parents are alive. So what was up with the demon bear? And, we got this question lingering. And then, of course, Xavier just cuts it, goes, it's mystical. Who knows?
Might as well have had a little tag that says the demon bear will return in X-Force.
Yeah. I mean, did he come back?
They did do in the when Clayton Crane was drawing X-Force with Kyle and Yost, I think, were scripting. They do a demon bear arc where Warpath and Danny have to fight it. I've always
is that during the time that Danny was had a full face mask and she was with the MLF?
No, this is considerably after that. This is like this is Necrocea era X-Force.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So they did he ever team up with Adversary?
No.
I feel like it's a missed opportunity. That'd be a pretty cool team up.
Well, I mean, culturally speaking, the whole bear thing was Cheyenne, while the Adversary was deeply rooted in Forge's Sioux ancestry.
That's fair. But nonetheless, X-Men villain's got a villain.
Yes, the Adversary was a cool one. He looked great.
Adversary sometimes has a great design. I've seen some modern looks where it leans a little too hard into, we got to make his headdress the biggest possible thing.
I always like the fact that when they drew his headdress, the tips of the headdress seemed to be kind of like drooping a little. Like there was a level of decay or corruption involved.
Fall of the Mutants is probably my favorite X-Men story.
Really?
And oh man, I love it. And they're definitely walking a fine line on with the Adversary. The whole time I was like, all right, Claremont, you're on thin ice. We'll see it. But it turns out phenomenal. And it's such a good Forge story. Like that story is why Forge is one of my all-time favorite characters.
I'm still gonna stick with Mutant Massacre.
Mutant Massacre real good.
I think we're gonna say that's. I'd safely say that Fall Mutants and Mutant Massacre are our favorite stories of the 20th century, because damn Hawks and Pox.
I love Hawks and Pox, but it's hard to beat Fall of the Mutants. Hawks and Pox doesn't have Dallas getting torn through time and NPR reporters from real life on the scene.
Well, yeah. Oh, I don't know. I'm gonna go fanboy here. I think the Hawks and Pox would do a lot better if they had Sabretooth in the Hellions book.
You know what? Honestly, he'll probably show up in the book. I feel like they're building.
I'm sure he will.
I feel like it's going to have there. Yeah, I feel like they're going to cycle through members pretty quickly.
That book. It seems like the right book for him.
Oh, yeah.
I'm assuming that Hitchens has a plan for Creed, and that's the reason why he's the only person in the pit.
Yeah.
Basically taken out of the cycle, and maybe he's going to be part of another storyline. That's how I'm being optimistic.
We'll see.
We'll see.
Anyways, issue number 21 is a classic Claremontian cooldown issue where they just hit you with a very heavy arc, and now we're just gonna have a good time. We're gonna have some fun.
It's time for Summer Party.
Yeah, the kids invite a bunch of kids over for a big old sleepover, and one of my favorite details in the opening 2-page spread is the Louise Simonson cameo.
I saw that too. I was just looking at that going, hey, in the big spread, and she's just right there in the foreground.
I think someone even calls her Wheezy at some point. So
yes, they do.
Just to make sure you caught the reference.
I totally saw the Wheezy reference. I also think I saw Brickman in there as well.
Oh, where at?
She's the one on the left of the big 2-page spread.
Or on the right? Because Simonson's on the left.
Okay, so I'm getting them back to front.
Okay.
I'm not looking at the comic right now.
Let's see. I don't know. I wouldn't recognize June Brigman, but that's cool. I figured that okay, so if Louise Simonson's up here, there's probably some other people snuck in there. Yeah, that's really cool.
It was very clear to me that we were looking at some real people faces in that spread, And I was like, that has to be Louise Simonson.
Yeah,
That
that
has to be. And if that's true, then the other woman had to be Louis Brigman.
was very fun.
Yeah.
But here we've got the kids just trying to mingle with the locals. You got a little bit of hint of some stories to come with Warlock zooming through Asteroid M. I got a good chuckle out of. Of course, we got our mandatory Tom Selleck reference.
And Rain actually started getting a face again. I know Sienkiewicz's first issues are kind of blocky and mismatched, but he started actually drawing her face in a recognizable way, which I thought she looked cute.
Yeah, this is a good focus issue for Rain as well. We get the other girls giving her a makeover, and Sam, poor sweet stupid Sam, sees her and goes, "Excuse me, miss, who is this gal? She's gorgeous. Could we please speak to Danny or Ileana or Mara or Rain?" And then she goes wolf form and
gut shots him.
gives him a good shot in the nuts or the gut. It's okay. Looking at it, it's definitely the nuts though.
Yeah, we all know what's going on, and she doesn't even feel bad about it. This leads, of course, the two boys to go and I guess do their own thing. Sam's skinny dipping in the waters outside, and that's when they encounter the Warlock meteor. Yep. And in fine teenage boy fashion, hey, let's take this back to the mansion.
And of course, the robot wakes up and starts using that techno-organic virus so he can eat. Knocks the power out while the girls are playing with a Ouija board with Danny supplying some demonic imagery. And Rain, as always, got to have a panel of Rain questioning how holy these things are. But it still does not feel right. There are real demons and magical beasties in the world. We fought them. Invoking any of their kind, especially in jest, smacks of tempting fate. I thought the Mara was more sensible.
Well, in the Magic Limited series, it's very, very specific about how Magic does her work, is the fact that she uses white magic in a black magic way. Mm-hmm. So, like, her pentacles have that pure white fire, but she's still facing the base of it instead of the point. And
it's such a fun detail. I love how much thought they put into how Magic's abilities work. Yeah. And also that Lockheed's around, because Sienkiewicz draws a super cute Lockheed.
He did a great job. I was really surprised by that. It has not been as messy as I recall, and I think it's because I didn't react very well to Warlock when he first showed up, because I couldn't tell what the fuck was. There goes my F-bomb. I couldn't tell what was going on.
He's so cute. I love his little bug-eyed reactions. I love the way, like, his spindly limbs and how he morphs throughout the book. Do you remember in I think it was in the Asgardian Wars stuff, when Art Adams was drawing Warlock, and there's that scene where he comes swooping in as the Enterprise?
Yes.
Good stuff.
I remember
really
that.
Fun.
He was a big fan of shape changing into various aircraft.
Yes. Yeah. I loved that, and I think that was mostly when Simonson took over the book. Well, I think when Claremont was still where they had him and Doug doing their team combo armor stuff.
Or Warlock was like had a red cape and a big W on his chest.
Yes. And he would like wrap himself around Doug.
Yes.
Poor Best Doug. Friends. Love those boys.
Self-soul friends.
Self-soul friends. Oh, another great issue that's not collected in trade. The one after Doug dies and Warlock digs up his body.
Oh, God, yes. That's such a great cover, too. This one.
Yeah.
And then Warlock is like coming off of the top of his head with a big old smiley face, like everything's great and we're having a picnic.
So there's the central conflict of this issue is them trying to keep the other kids from seeing Warlock while they're trying to do battle / contain Warlock and figure out his deal. And you mentioned before, this is where Doug comes in. Because they just go in the middle, Cannonball flies off in the middle of the night to pick up Doug Ramsey, tell him he's a mutant, and then ask him for help in deciphering.
Yep, because that's how that's handled. Meanwhile, Rain has shifted into her wolf form to take care of something, only to have some of the slumber party girls recognize, hey, that's a nice dog. Daniel's like, it's a wolf, actually. And they're like, ooh, you mean like ElfQuest? And I'm like,
A fun shout out.
a fun shout out to another book. As a child, I cherished ElfQuest.
It's the pennies are still putting out books.
They did a thing called Final Quest, which I really thought was going to be the end of it.
And then they did more.
And then they decided, we're going to do this thing with Skywise. Yeah.
I really like the detail that Rain still has the same rose in her hair when she morphs into the wolf form. I thought that was very cute.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, there's a little like silver rose that she has in her hair. And then when she turns into the dog, she's got the rose still. But all is well that ends well. The kids are able to understand where Warlock comes from and like, hey, you're just like us. You're also running away from a world that hates and fears you. And so they introduce him to Chucky Z, and Charles is like, welcome to the New Mutants, even though you're not a mutant. He's a sweet robot boy.
Warlock is a mutant.
A mutant robot.
He is a mutant of his own race. This has been firmly established.
All right, that's a loophole, but I'll allow it.
It is a loophole, but a loophole nonetheless that works.
Technically correct. The best kind of correct.
The best kind of correct.
One thing I really love about these issues going forward is starting with this one, we start getting character profiles at the end of each issue. Mm-hmm. And this one, we get some great, just awesome little full page spreads of Cannonball. We get a great Magic, and we get a great Sunspot. Mm-hmm. And I wish more books would do stuff like this. It's just really fun little detail.
Yeah. I so many things that new books could be doing that the old books did, but I really like some of the stuff that the new books are doing.
It's true.
I mean, like Hickman's full text pages explaining stuff that he doesn't want to explain with pages in the comic. And
you got to have those PowerPoints in the middle of your book, right? In a Hickman book.
I love those Hickman PowerPoints.
I do too.
Especially Sinisters.
My favorite Hickman book, Pax Romana, the entire epilogue is just a timeline. Like, it's just pages of here's how the effects of this book affect the future. It's a very fun little graphic design detail of his. And he does the art on that as well.
Of course.
But we get a little break before we go into the next arc where the kids meet rock and roll mutant Lila Cheney. And this is her first appearance.
And the return of Bob McClode doing art towards
Yes. Very, very surprised to see him back, but he really fits the story well. One thing I was very surprised by was Warlock's affable human disguise, where he's like a 6 foot tall brunette boy.
Yes, indeed. I remember back when City of Heroes first came out, I made a team of a bunch of people, and we basically just, I'm going to say it, we copied the New Mutants.
As one does.
And we duplicated their red and their yellow and black uniforms. And I remember this one guy kind of came in a little late, and it's like, okay, you're going to be Warlock. And it's like, well, how are we going to do that? And it's like, I dug up that annual issue. It's like, be really big and have brown hair and wear this.
So Lila Cheney is a mutant singer / thief who has the power of teleportation, but only across planetary distances. And in this issue, she is going to steal the planet Earth and sell it.
Because that's what you do. So, yeah, the way her teleportation, it's like the weirdest thing. It's like, if I want to go short distances, I have to do it the long way. I mean, she goes from planet Earth to a frickin' Dyson sphere.
Yeah.
Out somewhere, and then comes back just to go normal distances.
And meanwhile, she's being stalked by the Varanknen, who are some lizardy people with big old, I don't even know what to call them, whiskers, mutton chops. They're extra long rubies. Yeah, and of course, the kids get mixed up in things. Cannonball has, I'm not going to call it a tryst, but Lila takes a liking to him and teleports him to her Dyson sphere. Starts putting the moves on him, gives him a little leather outfit. The poor boy wasn't ready for it.
And the continuity of that is, of course, that when we go back to the Cloak and Dagger storyline, Sam is wearing a Lila Rocks t-shirt, and his image is now that of Billy Idol.
Yeah. So, oh man, yeah. Like Billy Idol by way of Randolph Scott, because he's still got that. He's still got that Southern boy look to him.
Scott.
It really is shocking to me how much he looks like him. Like, you know, that good old cowboy, got a little corn-fed boy. But yeah, Doug uses his translation powers. Everyone goes home safe. Bobby's jealous that his buddy can mac on gals too. And that brings us to
that's bad. He can't have that.
And that
Bobby's 5'4".
he's got growing to do.
Yeah.
But that brings us to Rain's Fairy Tale, which is the start of a Cloak and Dagger crossover. And I gotta tell you, after bumping into Cloak and Dagger multiple times in the last couple months in guest appearances, I'm starting to think I just don't like Cloak and Dagger.
Yeah, when we were doing the read-through, we had decided I completely forgot about this particular storyline. I completely glossed over it. So when me or Gideon are sitting there plotting about the issues that we're going to look at, we looked at Marvel Team Up Annual number 6, which has the New Mutants with Cloak and Dagger. It's like we both decided it's not really important, doesn't really impact anything. We're going to completely skip it. And I didn't know that also
what
that Gideon
fools we were.
Gideon never read the book. So when this Cloak and Dagger storyline, which is obviously a sequel of that annual, comes up, Gideon has no clue where this came from.
And I'd read these issues before, but I'm pretty sure I just skimmed through them before because, like, I don't really care about Cloak and Dagger. But yeah, trying to parse them out without having read that team up, I was like, what the hell is happening? But that said, while this is definitely the low part of Sienkiewicz's run. It does open with a really fun training segment with Nightcrawler and Colossus training the New Mutants. Mm-hmm. Nightcrawler teaches Cannonball how to use his body to redirect himself in midair. Teaches Rain how to dance. Rain is a little demophobic, and so she freaks out when he looks like the devil.
Yeah, even though when he turns himself to look like a clown when they have the little dance, she's all charmed by it. But as soon as it drops and she realizes, she's been dancing with Nightcrawler, she runs away.
Colossus and Bobby get into a little bit of fisticuffs. They're wearing their pugilist masks and whatnot.
Yeah, this happens twice during this particular 3-issue stretch. I don't know about you, Gideon, but I'm going to keep my review of this pretty truncated because as you and I were talking about this before we started recording, this 3-issue arc should have been 1 issue. It really was. There's a lot of things that got stretched out that didn't need to be.
Well, I'd say cut it down to 2 because I love the Rain's Fairy Tale issue is really good.
Yeah, and that not counting that. I'm talking about the issues after that.
Oh yeah, those it is stretched the hell out because
it doesn't need to be.
I mentioned this to you before the show. Cloak and Dagger, it's like a rite of passage for teen heroes to have to beat them. They are Dolph Ziggler level jobbers. They show up, they get, they throw down with whoever the characters you actually care about are, and then they go back to their own book. And I don't know what I'm missing. I just can't get into the characters.
Yeah, honestly, the only reason that these issues are stretched out as far as they go. I mean, yes, Rain's Fairy Tale doesn't really have a whole lot to do with the meat of the story. Just it's really kind of her thing, but it's still part of this arc. But the after issues are really unnecessary, and they're stretched out for one reason, and that is Tyrone Johnson, because he can't decide whether he wants to be Cloak or if he wants to be Tyrone, and he has this level of indecision that stretches out until the very last moment.
On the one hand, I get his conflict because when he's Cloak, he doesn't have a body, and that sucks. On the other hand, it just gets to the point of cartoonish of how back and forth he goes with the issue. And it's just like, good Lord, and
he's got that horrible stutter, which I don't know if you've ever read a stutter. It's really annoying.
it's frustrating to read. Like, I clown on Claremontian accents all the time, but this goes a step beyond. And you know what? Kudos for trying to replicate a stutter in text, but it's a really frustrating reading experience.
Yeah.
Now, that said, the Hellfire stuff's really cool.
Hellfire stuff is really cool.
I like Celine's ascension to becoming the Black Queen is interesting. And also, Manuel da Costa becoming, what's his new rank? Is he the bishop?
Black Bishop.
Black Bishop. Okay. So what happened? So we didn't even talk about Rain's fairy tale at all. She basically is, while the other kids are playing, she writes a little fairy tale version of herself who is a friend of the animals and turns into a wolf and goes and fights the bad guys to save her prince, while her body is doing other things that are maybe comparable to that.
Yeah,
because you see the cloak and dagger powers. When Sunspot and Rain were mixing it up on Cloak and Dagger, they absorbed their powers somehow, and their powers are controlling them at night. And Bobby's going around beating up Colossus and eating him. And Colossus has sad dreams of the time that he walked out on Kitty for that alien in Secret Wars.
And then he left that Secret Wars alien behind with a possible baby.
And then Wolverine took him to a bar to beat his ass and let Juggernaut do it for him. They don't bring that up in the issue. I just bring it up because it's one of my favorite issues of X-Men ever.
Oh, and by far one of my absolute favorite frames of art where Juggernaut drops the entire bar on Colossus.
So good. So good. Oh, another highlight from this issue. And again, that does not have much bearing on New Mutants, but has a ton of bearing on X-Men. We get a little bit of drama with Magneto and Lee Forrester, the second best Cyclops love interest, who are hanging out in the sunken city of Riley, which is one of my favorite parts of Claremont's run of X-Men, that Magneto just found the city where Cthulhu lives.
Just happens to be.
Just been chilling there. And
this is like the first kind of directing Magneto to be a sympathetic character.
Which is fascinating that it happened in New Mutants. Although I guess that makes sense because Magneto does become a major part of New Mutants during Louise Simonson's run. But it's so surprising to see this happen in New Mutants before it happens in X-Men. Because this is all leading up to the trial of Magneto, if I'm not mistaken. If I'm not getting my timeline mixed up. Yeah. Because, man, I really enjoyed those sequences. I liked their banter with each other. I liked seeing Lee Forrester again because I thought that she was just kind of gone after those X-Men issues.
These issues actually also occurred during the Firestar 4-issue limited series.
Oh, when Emma Frost made her blow up a horse. Good times.
Yeah, and the fallout from the Firestar issues happens in New Mutants as Emma Frost shows that, well, you know what? This is actually where they start turning Emma Frost into a sympathetic character as well. You know, because she actually cares about her students, and this is where you first see that. Because she punishes Empath for how he dealt with Firestar in that. And then he tries to use his powers on Emma, and you see just how much willpower she's got as she just cleaves right through his massive love bomb he tried to give her.
I really want to dive in after doing all this reading of New Mutants. I'm going to have to go on Marvel Unlimited and read all those issues that haven't been collected because, goddamn, New Mutants is good stuff.
Yes.
Another fun bit, we get a little Inspector Clouseau cameo.
I saw that.
Yeah, jumped out at me. I was like, very surprising.
I think that was Danny's illusion because they said, hey, do something. And like it almost looked like she threw an illusion over her shoulders. They're going up the stairs. And that's when our good friend Inspector Clouseau pops up behind the weeds or the plant.
Yeah. So Bobby with Cloak's powers becomes a big old demon bear looking shadow monster. And Rain with dagger powers becomes a much taller, more confident with long flowing hair bombshell. And
she becomes a red-haired dagger.
Yeah, she becomes the princess that she was imagining she would become. And man, it's some weird stuff. They go into a spirit realm so magic can deal with it. But then Charles is like, they have a psychic power signature similar to mysticism, but it's not quite, which is why your powers didn't work on it. So they got to bring in Rogue to absorb powers and redirect them, but also still have Magic use her soul sword to sever the powers from people. It's
another
so much.
reason to bring Rogue into this comic, the second time now.
And you want to talk about how dense these books are? Wall of text when Charles gives Tyrone a pep talk. Good Lord. Like,
it is so dense.
Credit to Sienkiewicz's amazing acting that he's able to make this sequence visually appealing, because it's just like, it's paragraph after paragraph of this stuff.
Mean, you got to wonder with the Marvel editorial when Claremont turned in his script and it was like a book.
Claremont had enough clout at this point that he could do whatever he wanted. So they were just happy they were getting 2 X books out of it at a time.
Yeah, this was about 3 years. 3 years after the Dark Phoenix saga.
Mm-hmm. He got that, like, he got that walking around money at this point.
He had that walking around money. He had that FU money.
But yeah, so Cloak and Dagger get their powers back. Status quo's returned to normal. All the kids are good. They go and save a couple kids that had shown up earlier from getting taken in by this pimp. And we mercifully don't have to see Cloak and Dagger until they show up again. But in a very fun tease of the next arc that I'm very excited for, one of our character profiles for this issue is Legion. And this is
all of his crazy Sienkiewicz hair.
His first appearance. He'd been mentioned in New Mutants #1, but we finally actually get to see what he looks like. And I'm so glad they waited for Sienkiewicz to be on this book to show you, like, to give a visual representation.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it can be understated how much influence Sienkiewicz's art had on the direction of the character. Like, his splintered psyche with the way he layers different sketches to create this, like, mosaic of a face. It's gorgeous.
Hey, and hats off to Fox for actually having the stones to not only make a Legion series, but going the full effort and giving it all the seasons that the show needed.
The best superhero show ever. It's my Galaxy.
I enjoyed the
Galaxy Brain nuclear hot take.
Yeah, I enjoyed The Gifted, but I heard that a lot of critics were really just showcasing Legion as the breakout hit of the 20th century Fox mutant era.
Yeah. Legion is, like, that first season of Legion is a perfect season of television. I think season 2 kind of gets lost in the woods a little bit in the middle, but it finds its footing by the end. Haven't watched season 3 yet. Very excited to. But
I never watched season 2, but I definitely love Aubrey Plaza. So she kept me bringing back to season 1.
Yeah.
I didn't want her to be dead.
Big spoiler for season 1 of Legion. If you haven't watched it, hit that skip 15 seconds button. But Aubrey Plaza as Shadow King, one of the best supervillain performances of all time.
Oh God, yes, Shadow King. Wow,
she's so good in that role.
And so well done that we're bringing Shadow King up now because of how intrinsically tied into New Mutants he was.
Yes, which we will see not in next week's episode because we will be covering new comics, but the week after. So Marvel is releasing new comics issues every other week and releasing trades in the weeks between those. So given that that's a good half of our coverage gone, we decided that we would continue this feature on off weeks. So when weeks we have enough books to pad out an hour-long show, we can do our regular series episodes with news and comic reviews. And whenever it's a little bit light, we can go back to our graphic novel reviews and suggestions.
Yeah, maybe next week we'll have a lot more about the Zack Snyder cut of Justice League that was announced.
Oh boy, we'll be talking about that.
Yeah, because we're hearing more stuff about it. So maybe next week we'll have a lot more to talk about.
I'll have some juicy news.
And our Mutants of the Caribbean arrive next week.
Yes, there is a hot issue of Marauders coming out next week. So I'm excited to continue our Hawks and Pox era X-Men coverage.
Yes.
So I guess closing thoughts on this first couple arcs of Chris Claremont and Bill Sienkiewicz's run on New Mutants. Demon Bear Saga, all-time great. Phenomenal artistic showcase. It has one major flaw that has aged atrociously, but barring that, it's 100% earns its classic status. It's just such a good book that's worth reading today. Yeah, they're making a movie of it. What else you got to know? Hopefully they won't Dark Phoenix it.
Man, my fingers are crossed because, man, I just want to love this movie. I want to love this movie.
Well, as much as I also want to love the movie, bear in mind, I also wanted to like Cloak and Dagger. So maybe I just need to read their own book. Maybe they just suck when they show up in other people's titles to get clowned on.
I actually need to watch the last season of Cloak and Dagger.
And I've heard the show's good. I want to check it out.
It is good. It is good. And my buddy Steve, my HeroClix playing partner Steve, which when we do a HeroClix episode will be on the show, loves him some Cloak and Dagger.
Did they make a 150-point cloak and a 150-point dagger?
If they haven't, they probably will because they're trying to keep teams to about 300. So they're
And I was going to say, how do you justify making cloak or dagger 150 points?
There actually been some combo pieces where both cloak and dagger are on the same piece.
See, that'd be a 150-point piece, but both of them I can't see being worth more than 100 each.
Yeah, but
I guess cloak as a bus is pretty effective. So
they've decreased the points on HeroClix to about half. So when you're looking at a figure, go, wow, this is a lot of powers on this. I bet you it's like 120 points, and you look at it, it's 60 points. I think it's because they want people to make larger teams.
Yeah, and I 100% appreciate that because when I was playing HeroClix, a problem I'd constantly run into was, well, damn, I can run this one big piece, I guess one crappy piece to fill in the rest of the points.
Yeah, you just got to hope to God that Captain Marvel you just booked out is going to be able to kill everybody.
Yeah. No kidding.
Like, our boy Scarlet Spider right here is a 60-point figure.
Kane. But I guess with that's going to wrap it up for this week. Casey, if you want to take us away with our standard plugs?
Our standard stuff. If you want to support us, please throw some money at our Patreon because we will use this to make the show better. And I promise you, any single dollar that we get, it's going to go somewhere to make it better. We get back in the studio, we need new cameras. It doesn't. You may not know that, but we do need some more cameras. We're trying to get a new camera setup for our HeroClix episode, and it's going to require some new hardware. I think my editor Rob's been talking about new mics somewhere down the line. So if you feel like that you want to be a part of the Hazardous Materials family and watch us talk about you almost intimately on the show because you gave us money, man, donate. Throw some money on our Patreon. Check out our missing episode from back in this episode number 5. Check out all the images that we've been using in the past few episodes on the gram, which I do need to update. And we need to put all those images from last episode in there because, man, we used a lot of them. We are also present on Facebook. We got all our new episodes are posted every Tuesday on our Hazardous Materials website or our Facebook page. I've also got my own personal project with Comic Book Facts, which I will discuss heroes and details to the casual fan that may have only seen their heroes on media like movies and TV shows. I'm going to explain to you all the nuances of your favorite new character in a way that you may not have known about. And you can find that at facebook.com/mycomicbookfacts. And I think that pretty much covers it. Gideon, you got anything?
No, that'll do it for us. We will see you guys next week with shiny new comic books.
We'll see you next week in the studio. See you then.